I just Okay. Good morning to everyone. Welcome to the Italian section of the Biochar. I am Mauro GIORCELLI. I'm very honored to be here to represent the ichar. Ichar is the Italian Association for the Biochar. And we are at the stand G36, just here. And if you want to visit us, you are super welcome. And I want just to briefly introduce the partners that we have here in our stand. And then later this will be our president, Alessandro Pozzi, that will do a brief interview with two Italian pioneers on the field of the biochar. So I give immediately the stand over to the first company, that is IKI, and Silvia will talk briefly about the IKI.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending this Italian session. We are ICI Obiettivo 20. It's named after the 20th of the ICI targets. And if you want to know more about our name, you can go to our website where we explain why we are called that. We are a startup enterprise that devised a carbon credit scheme that is peculiar in that it does not take into account only the carbon removal credits that are associated with the biochar itself, the material biochar, but we also take into account any additional carbon credits that can be certified by tracking the downstream uses of biochar along a cascade of uses, such as co-composting, livestock management, slurry management, down to the final agricultural use as a soil amendment or fertilizers. And our system is flexible. It is it facilitates the uptake by small pyrolysis plants, by small farmers in rural territories, and it is useful for promoting the onset of networks of enterprises in rural settings where you can use waste materials from forestry, from agricultural waste, such as oil pruning, vine prunings, doing biochar, and then using it in the farming context and improving processes such as composting of organic materials that are rich in nitrogen. And when the co-composted biochar gets used as a fertilizer, having uploaded itself with nutrients and microorganisms, then we can also credit the additional carbon credits, making through all the cascading uses of biochar. So basically, this is it. If you want to know more about it, you can come and visit us, and we will be happy to explain the system to you. Thank you.
Okay, the second one is Curti.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eugenio Guerrieri, the general manager of Curti. We are here with our business unit about circular economy. We produce a plant for gasification, pyrolysis, or combining pyrolysis with gasification. We are very happy to have joined this company, and you are welcome in our stand booth, in which we can explain more in detail. 2 words about Curti company. Is a family company born 1950. Is the second generation of the same owner. We have 6 divisions. The first one is related as subcontract of Tetra Pak. We produce all machine, for example, to put the cap on the brick. We have already produced 2,500 and something machine that we ship directly to our customer. We produce a part for Leonardo company for the helicopter, the part in titanium sheet. We are located in Emilia-Romagna, so we are in the packaging valley. So we produce a machine, automatic machine for pharma and food market. And the latest one is related for the harness with a transfer machine that can produce this kind of harness, completely automatic for the automotive sector or power cord sector. And the business unit circular economy. Thank you very much. You are welcome in our.
Very good. Thank you again. The third one is Rhonda.
Good afternoon to everyone. I'm Roberto Andreatta, an engineering working in Ronda Engineering. We are located in Zanè, in Vicenza province in Veneto, the northeast side of Italy. And we are a manufacturer of pyrolysis and gasification plant. We have a particular kind of reactor that is based on an old type, but we have made some improvement to purify the gas, because you know the gas is the quality of the gas is the most important issue, most important problem of the gasification plant. The plant for us are primarily for power generation, and we can stop the process to produce the biochar, or we can go at the end to produce ash. And our corner is in the Italian square, and you are welcome to our corner to explain or to ask anything you want. Thank you very much.
Okay, the next one is Record.
Thank you very much for having me here. My name is Andrea Maria Rizzo. I'm technical director of Record. Record is a not-for-profit research organization based in Florence, a private entity. We operate in the field of circular economy, renewable energy, valorization of wastes and residues for companies, but also in the research field in funded research programs, like European programs. We provide outsourced research services for a large varieties of companies, from SME to large enterprises. And we are articulated across 4 business units. So we have a chemical analytical laboratory that can provide a throughful and comprehensive services for companies making researches in biomass field. We have a raw material and carbon recycling business unit dealing with extracting value from wastes. We have a agro bioclima unit dealing with biochar incorporation into soils, biological processes for bioenergies, and a thermal process business unit dealing on the construction and manufacturing of a small-scale pilot unit for process development. Come and visit us if you want to discuss one of this topic with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Enerion, George.
Thank you, Mauro. Hi, my name is George from Enerion Global. Enerion is an Italian-based company specialized providing services for consulting for carbon management strategies and also for sustainability. In the field of carbon management strategies, we help companies to become carbon neutral, to be certified carbon neutral. Also, we provide a large scope of services to airports, which intend to add to the airport carbon accreditation program. Today, we have around 50 airports around the world which are applying to this program. And also, we provide support for projects which seek to be certified to obtain carbon credits. And this touch sustainability. My colleague Alessandro Pozzi, president of ichar, will explain you more about it. But basically, we support the projects, notably the agricultural projects which are seeking to introduce a carbon credit scheme. So thank you very much. We are also here in the ichar pavilion. So we are ready to discuss about you. Thank you very much. With you.
Thank you, George. The last but not the least is Sartor.
Thank you, Mauro. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here. This is my company, basically, but I'm here as an IBI vice chair. So I'm not representing the company, but my friend Mauro was so kind to invite me here. And my interest in biochar is related to the introduction of circular models, so biochar systems in poor countries, in Africa, in rural context, where this technology can be organized around the introduction of low-tech devices, and the biochar can achieve a lot of very interesting benefits for smallholder farmers. So I'm here around with the ichar community and the IBI community, and should you be interested to have a conversation, you can find me around. Thank you very much.
Thank you also to Lucia. Okay, so now we have finished with the presentation of our companies, and now I let the microphone to Alessandro Pozzi for the interview.
Thank you very much, Mauro. So we have, good morning, everybody. I'm Alessandro Pozzi, president of the Italian Biochar Association. We have two interview online, remoting in a remoting way. We can start with David Chiaramonti here on the right. Let me introduce David. I have to read because it's quite difficult to remember. So David Chiaramonti, PhD, is Vice Rector for International Affairs and the full Professor of Energy Economics, as well as Bioeconomy at the Politecnico University, the Politecnic University of Turin, and chair the Renewable Energy Consortium for Research and Development record. He authored more than 180 publications and participated to more than 27 European projects on biofuel, biochar, and bioeconomy, such as the ongoing European project Bio4A on sustainable aviation fuel and Bike on low and indirect land use change biofuels. Former member of the International Energy Agency Bioenergy, is member of the International Civil Aviation Organization Task Force on Alternative Fuel for Aviation, European Civil Aviation Conference, European Technology and Innovation Platform, and more member of the Italian cluster on bioeconomy. He coordinated the DG-NR Fuel Forum of European Union, and now the DG RTD tender study on development of outlook for the necessary means to build the industrial capacity for drop-in advanced biofuels. He was awarded the Lindenborg Prize in Stockholm, and this is included in the Stanford University list of 2% most scientists. Welcome, David.
Good afternoon.
We can start with our interview, and the first question is: you have been operating for many years in the renewable energy, biomass, bioenergy, and the bioeconomy sector, including, but not only, from a technological point of view. So biochar production, pyrolysis, gasification, hydrothermal carbonization we have been talking about it without often being completely clear about the difference, even in terms of opportunities of these different systems. Often in ichar, we are asked what technology do we need? So can you help us to clarify a bit, also providing us with the state of the art of the technology offer at a European and global level? Thank you, David.
Thank you, Alessandro. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for inviting me, and I think also Franco for this talk. Well, actually, technologies. We started our journey on thermochemical conversion mid-90s. Long time ago, many things have happened from that time. If I may say, making a very broad average and probably rude conclusions, technologies have developed very much. We have been using also not only designing and building many different configuration that developed over the years. So overall, today I would say technologies are rather mature. Very often there's a misunderstanding between technological maturity and market maturity. In many cases, the technologies is actually mature from an industrial point of view or very close to this, do not have the market condition to spread. And this means that sometimes people confuse the fact that they don't see plants or steel on the ground, as we say, with the issue in maturity of the technology itself. Pyrolysis is very well known. Gasification made a very big step ahead in so many years of research and development. HTC probably is lagging a bit behind to that, but it could come soon. The key point is that they are quite different between themselves, and the market will drive this technology to industrial diffusion, I mean, to exploitation, depending on the rules that you apply. For example, if a project or a technology is more energy oriented, gasification will indeed have a big room. And the goal of gasification, as you know, is to bring the carbon from the solid state to the gaseous phase. So the biochar is a kind of co-product, but I have to recall that we use the measure of carbon in ashes as a measure of the inefficiency of the plant in that respect, because the main scope of the plant is to bring this to the gas stage. Pyrolysis, which can be done also, as a previous speaker said, by operating in a flexible way some of this unit, instead has the main scope of bringing the carbon in the solid. And this brings us back to the issue of the market for the carbon. And sure, we will briefly touch this. But if the market, a carbon market is there and is well paid, there's no issue in having a pyrolysis plant distributed in the soil. Pyrolysis has a nice feature that is a bit different from gasification. You can rather well down or upscale, similar to a biogas plant in a certain way. More complex technologies that goes for more intense gas cleaning or other internal combustion engine uses. They are more demanding from a technological point of view. So in average, the tendency is that this kind of unit tends to be bigger because of economy of scale. That's a very rude and average approximation, but I think it's quite realistic to see this. Also, the dependence, and I finish my first talk here. The link to the presence of incentives for the energy generation also drives the possibility to install a gasifier-based power generator. Of course, you need a certain level or system to support the power that you produce from the solid, from the biomass. That has been decreasing in the last year compared to a decade or more ago. In Europe and in member states that have been pushing more on the variable renewable energy sector, wind and PV. But we have to recall that biomass now is the future player able to deliver balancing of the grid. We can control the production with biomass-based power generation and CHP units. So we can support the grid balancing with the power. Indeed, from my very personal point of view, I expect the carbon market to develop a lot in the coming year, and in combination with the desperate need of carbon and soil organic matter in soil, I'm pretty sure this will be a major issue for technology spreading.
Thank you, David. Thank you. The second question is about the issue of carbon credits. Tomorrow we had a very interesting conference with the main player of the carbon offset and carbon removal. So the question is biochar and carbon credits inside and outside Europe. We have seen that it's an incoming tsunami, no? An incoming tsunami of opportunity for the modern farming. It would seem, but is it all true? Can you help us to better understand opportunities, limits, and barriers?
Well, thanks, Alessandro. I fully agree with you. I mean, I'm optimistic by nature, but my suggestion is also to try to be realistic and design a roadmap and a pathway. In other fields, in other biofuel chain, I have been in the past years. I observed the risk of over promising or creating over expectation in short time. I'm pretty sure this is a very sound pathway. Biochar will be a key player for natural-based carbon removal. If you read the communication by the European Commission 2021, the 15th of December, and more recently, the proposal for certification of carbon removal, long-lived carbon sequestration, or what we call stable, even if scientifically is not really correct, but let's call it stable carbon removal, is mentioned more than one time in this communication. And of course, if we approach the issue from the climate point of view and not from the agriculture point of view, the stability of carbon removal is fundamental, is the key element that we have to guarantee to the policymaker and to the general public, if I may say. However, as you know, now biochar can be eligible for the European scheme, the ETS scheme, only if you have a direct reduction. So, for example, if I use it in steel making or cement making, then I can claim an ETS valorization. Otherwise, I have to stay in the voluntary market with a significant limitation in terms of euro per ton of CO2 that I remove. I'm thinking large scale in particular. I'm not thinking small scale applications. However, if we look ahead, I think the European Union and the member states and the farmers, we will need this kind of removal, because it's always necessary to have a quota of compensation, even in the most optimistic scenario of renewable energy penetration. If any of these targets in electrical transport, in PV or wind penetration, whatever, is only partially achieved, we will have to offset and compensate. And biochar is really the one in line, to my point of view, because can ensure a permanent removal, and at the same time, you know better than me, can provide also other type of benefits to the farming activity. So my suggestion is let's steer the process in this direction, not over promising, keeping realistic figures. Don't be too excited to extreme market condition that one can find sometimes in the market, but these are niche application. Let's have the big goal in front of us and try to reach this goal in a reasonable time. We can be very, very fast compared to other alternatives, direct air capture and storage, for instance. That's much back. We are far ahead to this, so we are ready to deliver in a way from this technology.
Thank you, David. The next issue is the relation between mandatory and voluntary offset. This morning there was a question about this is important issue. You know that in the last month we have discussing about the new possible biochar perspective according to policy and regulation, new climate change policy and regulation. What the European Commission is doing on carbon removal certification and how to connect mandatory and voluntary offset market. What's about the importance of not distorting the market by flooding it with the credits?
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. If you are interested in that topic, I recommend reading the reports and documents from the International Carbon Action Partnership. That's very, very instructive, very well prepared. It is, from a technical point of view, absolutely possible to connect voluntary removal, let's say, and mandatory emission reduction. There are many schemes. You will find some of these in the report I mentioned. The only common point that I think, as you also said, is essential to keep someone that estimates the quota of carbon removal credits that one can deliver every year. So exactly not to reduce the value of these credits. However, we must be aware that it's not yet possible today. So for us, the first point now is to I see my voice twice, don't know why, but the point is to get this message accepted by the European Commission. So far, the tendency is that voluntary markets are reserved to the big emitters, and the main goal is to have these guys reducing their emission and not compensating. Without saying that we don't have to reduce the effort in this direction, so we agree that these big emitters should reduce their emission. We also know there's a need to compensation, and so connecting the two mechanisms would really facilitate large-scale deployment of the system and provide some certainty. So far, the focus is on using instruments that to me are a bit complicated, like the common agricultural policy mechanisms that I don't think fits very well to what we have in mind. And is also it has also been conceived under a different perspective, not the one we're discussing here. So my point is that we have a market that is existing, it's working well, and we're very familiar with, that is already in place in Europe, the ETS market. Why not using this market to open up the door to the biochar option? It will take some time to get there, but we have very good argument. And again, I think that if the biochar community send a single message to the policymakers, say we are here, we can deliver, we are much cheaper than any other option of carbon removal, but we also deliver other benefits. I don't need to remind, we lost 8.5 million hectares in the southern European countries only due to marginalization, desertification, salinization, drought, and so on. We really have a good story to tell and good opportunity to offer to the policymakers, but we must all drive into this direction and have a dialogue with the European Union, first of all, the different directorates together.
Last question about soil, and not from from the point of view of the soil, not from the point of view of carbon sink, because the new policy to fight climate change have brought the soil back to the center of the discussion. But we have discussed about soil degradation, loss of organic matter, and we will know that this is a problem, is an environmental problem across Europe, particularly in the Mediterranean area, in the Mediterranean region, with many areas impacted by desertification. So in the context in the EU Med on the Mediterranean area, the benefit of biochar assuming a strategic relevance. Can you help us to understand the priority of this area where ichar community works, mainly in comparison with other areas of Europe?
Yeah, yeah, I am very, very keen about this point because as a Mediterranean citizen, I feel the urgency to take action. I just mentioned the area we are losing or degrading in the 7 European Mediterranean countries only. Then the Mediterranean area is much wider. And I recall we are warming up 20% much faster than global. So we really have a urgency to take action. That is exactly the point that biochar can offer. We can start now and deliver. Of course, you asked me about gasification, STG, pyrolysis, different feedstock. Under this respective, differently from the carbon removal, aspect, all biochar are not the same. Biochar have different properties, and pyrolysis in particular can be tuned with the right type of feedstock, with the right reactor and process condition to optimize. What is the effect you are looking for? Mostly handling soil moisture content, nutrient release, and so on, but not only. So that's a specific area of work where also R&D is needed to improve our knowledge. It can be combined with many other, even small-scale processes like anaerobic digestion. Anaerobic digestion and pyrolysis can be very well connected, both outside the reactor and inside the reactor. We do have a number of projects on that and proposals being submitted exactly addressing this point. There are many research groups working in Europe on that topic. If one wants to see the Commission remarks on what I'm saying, I suggest reading the Clean Planet for All document. This was the document on the base of RED 2, 2018. And you see, at least to my knowledge, is the first time I see the European Union distinguishing between the different agroclimatic regions of Europe, northern, central, eastern, southern, and describing what are the climatic challenges that we are facing in these different regions. And you will see what I'm saying is exactly written there. After this document, there have been many others, but this, has a very important role because it is from the Commission itself. You will find also the JRC document stating the same, the European Environment Agency stating the same, and the fact that we can immediately deliver together with other measures, compost, nutrient recovery. Not to be misunderstood, there's not a single solution, including biochar. Biochar is not the solution for everything. It's a very big, important part of the solution, can deliver a lot, can be a reliable solution, ready to go right now if the policy is in place, but it will have to cooperate with the composting in that moment. And I conclude with that. In Spain, we are running a 4-year project in which we are cultivating on soil recovered with biochar, with compost, and with co-composted biochar, rotation between barley and camelina. Camelina is for jet fuel, barley is for food and feed. So, for example, the strong message, very strong message we can deliver from a project like this is that with biochar and compost intervention, soil that was totally unproductive becomes a bit productive. So it means the farming can be continued. We can sequester the carbon real, and even more important, we can tell a story that we are supporting food and feed production and not just energy, because barley would not be produced without intervention on the soil with compost and biochar. So the impact is enormous. And the message is really strong. We can support and enable more sustainable agriculture, which means reduced use of water, reduce use of or chemical fertilizer, and integrate in a nature-based approach this solution. That's a strong message, but I don't see our community to bring this with enough, effort to the political arena. We must be present there and send a strong message. We are here. We can do this, and there is a scientific evidence what I'm saying. So it's not myself just stating something, but it's well known.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you for
Thanks to
very
you.
interesting contribution. I don't know, we have time for a couple of very brief questions. No question. No question. Thank you, David. Thank you very much. So, passing to Franco, brief introduction of Franco Miglietta, accumulated during his career relevant scientific experience in with science, satellite remote sensing application for agriculture, and crop modeling with specific expertise in phenology. In the 90s, he developed innovative approaches in impact studies of rising atmospheric CO2 concentration on crops and vegetation. He also started new research in terrestrial carbon cycle science with reference to mass and energy exchange between vegetative surface and the atmosphere that led to the launch of the first Italian small environmental research aircraft. He also approached innovative studies on climate change mitigation strategies in the forest and agricultural sector. He authored so far 150 papers in scientific journals and edited several scientific books, being currently ranked among the top Italian scientists. He has been the coordinator of several major European projects, including GIORCELLI, the first European project on biochar, in which I had the honor of participating in 2011, so a lot of time. He also been awarded by several grants from private industries, where he developed original technology transfer action. It's an honor having Franco here. Franco can be fully considered the father of biochar in Italy, and we all owe him a lot. So, Franco, coming to our question, you recently published in the journal Global Change Biology a viewpoint on potential risk associated with the use of biochar as soil amendment and sequestration strategy. Can you briefly summarize your main points?
Okay, thank you very much, Alessandro. I have two fantastic daughters, and so I'm sure that they won't be very happy to know that I'm the father of biochar. Anyway, yes, we have been, as you said, I have been working also with other colleagues, including you and other people which is in the audience today. I've been working a lot in the biochar, especially in early times, and so I did a lot of work and trying to address the positive aspect of biochar application. I have been a fan of biochar application because I thought that this was a very nice and elegant way to sequester carbon from the atmosphere. I'm saying that because in the next and following your question, I will also try to go a bit into the dark side of biochar application that we try to investigate, because it's always nice when there is an innovation also to consider what is the backside. So we know all the potential and the benefits that we have with biochar, both for carbon sequestration and agriculture, and this has been investigated a lot. But there are also backsides that should not be forgotten and should be analyzed in the proper way. In the paper you mentioned, it was not really a paper, it was a letter to the editor in which we tried to address the point of one of the critical points of biochar application, which is the release of black carbon particles that may occur and that is necessarily unavoidably associated to the production and the use of biochar. Black carbon particles are small particles less than 2.5 micrometers of dimension that goes into the atmosphere. These particles are extremely light. They are not heavy at all, so they go into the atmosphere and they are transported by wind all over the places. It has been calculated that when we release a small particle to the atmosphere, they go all around the world in the order of weeks or months. So in a very short time, they can circulate in the atmosphere and go almost everywhere in the world. And those particles, and in particular the black carbon particles, have the problem that they absorb visible radiation when they are in the atmosphere. They absorb visible radiation and they warm up because they are absorbing sunlight, and when they warm up, they release heat, long wave emission, so they release heat. In this respect, the black carbon particles in the atmosphere have a negative feedback, or let's say have a positive feedback on the greenhouse effect, because when they float into the atmosphere, they can absorb light and remit heat. And this is what's happening in the greenhouse effect. In addition, those small particles can also, because they are traveling all over the places, they can go everywhere. They can go into the sea. This is not a big problem. They can go into the agricultural land, and this is not a big problem. But they can also be deposited on ice. And when they are deposited on ice, they create another positive feedback to global warming, because if the ice gets darker, and the black carbon is a dark particle, if the ice gets darker, then the ice can melt. And if the ice can melt, we are going again into a warming effect. So we have to pay some attention to this point. And in fact, in this letter to the editor, we calculate that if we consider the amount of small particles that are contained in biochar, and we assume one scenario that is a very, very large scale application of biochar all over the world, we are facing a major risk. We are facing a major risk. What is the risk? This, with biochar, we are sequestering carbon, which is good news. But on the other hand, we are releasing small particles that have a greenhouse effect. It's difficult to understand what is the benefit, what is the balance between the benefit and the risk, but it's something that we should keep continuing working on it, because we have to be aware that there is this risk hidden into the biochar application. Of course, there are many things we can do against that. I'm not saying, analyzing the risk, I'm not saying that we are in trouble, because there are many things we should consider, especially in the rules and in the procedures for application. For instance, we know that not all the particles contained in biochar will go into the atmosphere. Some of them will be incorporated into the soil, especially if the biochar is incorporated in the soil in the proper way. So this is something important. So if there are rules, we should be careful that the biochar incorporation in the soil is made in the potential way. Another option is, for instance, to use pellets instead of a biochar. In many instances, biochar comes already in the form of pellet, and the pellet are, of course, contains less particle than the less fragile biochar combination that we have seen around. And another important aspect is that when we incorporate and we put biochar into the soil, we may use wet biochar instead of dry biochar, because when it's wet, the amount of particles that will be released into the atmosphere will be much lower. These are just a few points, but critical points that we should consider, especially in the procedures and in the regulation in the future. We should not overlook this aspect. That was our message. The second point we try to address, and the second is another point that we should not forget. Again, I'm talking here about the dark side. I'm not talking about the good sides, as David did already, but here looking to the areas that require some attention, has to do with the albedo. The albedo, when we apply biochar to the soil, we make the soil darker. Biochar is black, and whatever we do, it will remain black. And the black compound has a lower reflectance of the shortwave radiation coming from the sun. And if we make the earth darker, we will have more heat released, more energy is absorbed as a shortwave from the sun, and more heat will be released to the atmosphere. So making the soil darker is not a very good idea. But there are also things we have to take into consideration. If we add the biochar to the soil, we make it darker. But if we properly manage the agriculture which is made over the soil, we can minimize this changing color of the surface. Changing color of the surface means a change in the albedo of our cropland. This is not a big issue when we apply biochar in one field or two fields or three fields all over the world. But if we really want to go to a very large deployment of the biochar technology, we have also to consider that we are making the earth darker. One thing we have been investigating in this regard, there are several solutions. We have been investigating in the past. It's not easy to understand what's happening, but we have been investigating it by comparing dark soil versus light soils. We found some places in Italy where at short distance one from another, we have a dark soil and a white soil and a lighter soil. And in this way, in a paper we published some years ago, we start to investigate and to analyze this. And we learned that the type of agriculture that is made over this dark and white soil has a potential to minimize the negative effect that we may have due to the darkening of the soil. I finish this just by reminding that we have a nice experiment which is ongoing since 2009. Now it's more than 10 years. It's 12, 13, 14 years ago. And if we could go there in this vineyard, you can see that 13 years after application, the soil is still darker when we applied the biochar and when we didn't apply the biochar. So again, as for the black carbon, this is an area that will require some attention.
Another question, I learned that you and your research team is currently engaged in research on agrivoltaics. That is the combination of the same piece of land of photovoltaics for renewable energy and agricultural production. Are you considering the implication of using biochar in such a novel systems?
Yes, for this, Alessandro, I will quickly share one slide that I have because I think it's interesting. I will go to that very quickly. I hope you can see my screen. Do you? Do you see it? Okay, there was something wrong, right? Okay, can you hear me again? Okay, okay, I cannot share, but coming to the agrivoltaic, indeed, we are working now in this agrivoltaic story. Agrivoltaic, what is? It's a photovoltaic which is especially devoted to the combination and the integration of agriculture production and photovoltaic and energy production. This is a novel science for us because we have never been testing what happens to our crops when you create some shade that is moving during the day because the sun always rotates in the sun in the sky. So it's a novel science, but it's a rather mature technology. So agrivoltaic is developing much faster than the research that should be associated to that. And this is an interesting aspect, and we want to pay some attention because there is an urgency, and we have to understand what are the best crops that can be used in agrivoltaic system, and what are the best strategies we can use to obtain maximum benefits from the integration of agrivoltaic, different type of crops and species, and the use of biochar. One advantage, for instance, of using biochar in agrivoltaic is that in agrivoltaic we have definitely less turbulence and less wind than in an open field. And this is a big advantage because we can use biochar in an area in which there is a less risk of particle release to the atmosphere. The second aspect that in agrivoltaic, we already have some shade. And so if we change a bit the albedo of the surface, we are not affecting much the overall albedo of our field. And this is another area where biochar application can be made and have a substantial more positive effect. So as I said, it's an open new science. We need some effort. We need some spending some time on it and try to develop the best combination between all these sources. The main goal of our society at the moment is decarbonization. Decarbonization means producing energy with renewable sources in order to avoid fossil fuel use, to amplify and increase the use of biochar as a means of carbon sequestration, and to find the right combination between all different factors in the story and in the game. I'm sorry for the interruption, but I lost contact for a while.
Thank you very much, Franco. We have a couple of minutes. Questions? No questions. Well, okay. Silvia.
Yes, I do have a question. Maybe for both of you, whoever can answer this. I think that as biochar is such a rich opportunity or set of opportunities of further developments of things that are all beneficial to the environment in several ways, either by avoiding risks by a correct management or taking profit of some new opportunities also by correct management of the processes that pyrolysis can trigger and inspire. It would be nice to have certification systems that are flexible enough to capture all these added value that is generated from different project settings, different applications. And so what do you think about the future of carbon credits in incorporating additional values that can be attached to the mere pyrolysis phase? So carbon credits, not just as crediting the carbon removal itself, which is the most valuable, it's the core of the system, but I see a lot of opportunities, additional opportunities that may benefit the climate or other environmental aspects that could be even going to the field of the general concept of biodiversity credits. Some reflections about this by you would really like to hear.
David, Franco.
Okay, I start and then okay. Good point. But we should, I think, look at these things in a progressive approach and more from an economic point of view than a technical. I mean, from the scientific and technological point of view, I completely agree with you, as well as also what Franco said, and I'm convinced there are ways to manage properly and rules to be developed to address all these points. But from an economic point of view, we are at the very, very early stage of development from a market point of view of this system, not even started in many cases. So we must be careful to create a pathway and not to create a system that is too complicated, too wide, that brings you two consequences. One is very difficult to explain. I mean, here we are among scientists, we know the matter, and of course we are enthusiastic to discuss all this aspect. But if you put yourself in the shoes of a policymaker, you must be straight and very simple if you want to have the snowball go. And I would be careful in putting too many things in the basket that would, for instance, if you tell these things, if your aim, for example, is to bring this topic under the ETS and you bring a discussion to the agricultural matter, they will immediately shift to CAP, to the Common Agricultural Policy, which is paid per hectare, something around 200 euro per hectare, totally unfeasible for a technology developer. So even if the reasoning was correct, the political effect can be negative. That's one point. The second point is that you have to keep in mind costs of this operation. Now we are facing a situation where this carbon credits is very low. The voluntary market credit. So all these things which are correct will cost money, and the technology and the market is in its infancy, is not yet there. There are no large scale systems. There's not yet big market actors that connect the dots and so on. So the risk again is that the whole system, the whole value chain, even if in good faith and with good arguments, becomes too expensive at the very early stage of kicking off the system, and this will block the development. It is instead more reasonable to go for a progressive application of more detailed and more, specific elements, every time trying to find a valorization of this element, because you are right. I mean, we need to valorize this, but don't forget that creating a new market or new rules takes years, and we have a deadline. The first one is 2030. And that's what worries me most. I mean, the fact that we initiate very intense discussions on rules, on mechanisms, on markets, that probably will end up in, I don't know, 5 years. And 5 years is already too late. The DG Clima, when they presented the proposal for carbon removal certification, they stated it will take roughly 1.5 years to be in place, and still there's nothing about market there. It's only about certification. So we risk to be late, and that's my main concern. But you're absolutely right in your remarks.
Yeah, Alessandro, if I have really 30 seconds to add a point,
Yes.
which goes in favor of this question, we have to consider that the main criticism to biochar internationally is that, okay, look, if we go into this direction, carbon credit, at some point in the poor countries, they will grow crop to produce biochar. And because, but there is a risk associated to that. And in fact, we have to, and I agree to the question, we should not complicate too much the story. You're right, David, we should not complicate much, but we should also consider that biochar has two benefits. And we forget one of the two. There will be many criticism around, there will be many critics, and this will slow down the success. So we should not forget that there is a lot of people outside here that is fighting against biochar.
One second, because I fully agree completely what Franco said, and I'm not an agronomist. You can teach me this, but the key point is not the biochar, is the agronomic model, as you said, rotations, good use of soil, and biochar is one component, and that is the point we should work. You're right.
Absolutely agree. We have a little delay, so we have to conclude. A very special thank to Franco and David, and we see again in Italy in our discussion with the biochar, Italian biochar community. A special thank to our partner that are in the ichar pavilion. Au revoir.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.